If you had to brake hard on a wet road tonight, not a controlled stop, an emergency, the tyre on your car right now would determine whether you walked away or not. Australian crash data shows that tyre-related factors contribute to thousands of serious accidents every year, and most of those vehicles were running tyres that looked perfectly fine from the outside. That is the problem. New tyres in Australia look identical on the shelf. They are not. 90% of what is being sold to Australian drivers right now was built to hit a price point, not to stop a car. Hi, my name is Arthur and this is Broken Australia. How tyres used to be built and when that changed. Back in the 1980s and the 1990s, buying a new set of tyres in Australia meant dealing with a handful of serious manufacturers: Michelin, Bridgestone, Pirelli, Continental, Goodyear. These were not retail brands, they were engineering companies. They employed rubber chemists. They ran dedicated proving grounds in conditions designed to destroy tyres faster than real roads could. They published independent test data because their reputation was the only thing separating them from the competitor on the next shelf. Performance was not a marketing angle, it was the entire product. Then two things happened. The consolidation wave rolled through the industry, Michelin absorbed smaller brands, and Bridgestone took over Firestone, and the Australian market cracked open to a flood of offshore budget imports that accelerated hard after 2010. Suddenly the shelf looked full of choice. It was not. It was the same shrinking pool of serious engineering, surrounded by an expanding ocean of product designed to look like a tyre and priced to end the conversation before it started. Retailers figured out very quickly that the average Australian buyer walks into a tyre shop, hears two prices, and picks the lower one. The silica content, the compound formulation, the casing construction, none of that is printed anywhere a customer can see it. So the incentive to spend money on it quietly disappeared. What followed was the same race to the bottom you see in washing machines and new construction homes. The budget tier expanded, the premium tier got pushed into a corner, and the corner got a sign on it that said, "Do you really need that? You do. Let me show you why." The wet road problem explained. Here is what actually happens when you brake hard at 100 kilometers per hour on a wet road. Not a planned stop, not easing into a red light, an emergency. The kind where your foot goes straight to the floor, and everything that happens next is decided by 4 palm-sized patches of rubber pressing against wet bitumen. In a vehicle fitted with a premium wet grip tyre, something from Michelin's Pilot Sport range, Continental's Premium Contact, or Bridgestone's Turanza, independent testing consistently shows stopping distances of between 35 and 40 metres in controlled wet conditions. That is not a marketing number. That is a measured result repeated across multiple test facilities on multiple vehicle platforms across multiple years of evaluation. Now put a budget tyre on the same car, same road, same speed, same driver, same weather. That same emergency stop now takes between 50 and 60 metres to complete. The budget tyre needs the full length of a semi-trailer more to bring the vehicle to a stop. 15 to 20 metres of extra distance that did not exist when you were running a premium compound. I want you to think about what 15 metres looks like at the point of an emergency. It is a pedestrian stepping off a curb. It is a tradies ute stopped dead in a merging lane. It is a kid on a bike who came out of nowhere on a side street in the rain. That distance is not abstract. It is the exact margin between a near miss and a coronial inquest. And the reason that gap exists is sitting right there in your bank account, a $200 saving at the tyre shop. That is the trade you made, except nobody told you it was a trade. That is the part that should make you genuinely angry, because the data has been there for a decade. The industry just never put it on the sticker. Failure point 1, the compound swap. The first failure point is the rubber compound itself, and this is where the cost cutting is buried deepest. Premium tyre manufacturers use high silica rubber compounds in their tread formulations. Silica keeps the rubber flexible at lower temperatures and maintains grip on wet surfaces where traditional carbon black compounds go hard and lose contact with the road. Silica is expensive. It is harder to process. It requires more sophisticated manufacturing. Budget manufacturers swap silica content for cheaper carbon black blends. The tyre looks identical. The tread pattern might even be identical. The mold tooling cost is sometimes shared. What is different is what the rubber does at the molecular level when your tyre is trying to grip a wet bitumen surface on the Monash freeway at 7:30 in the morning. You cannot see the compound. You cannot feel it in a car park test drive. You find out about it at the point of an emergency braking event. By then, the return window is well and truly closed. Failure point 2, the label right. Tyres sold in Australia are supposed to carry performance ratings for wet grip, fuel efficiency, and noise. Sounds great. In practice, those ratings are generated under controlled laboratory conditions that have almost nothing to do with Australian roads, Australian temperatures, or Australian driving patterns. A tyre rated B for wet grip in a European lab test may perform significantly worse on a hot, sun-degraded Queensland bitumen surface in February. The fuel efficiency rating is even worse. It is calculated at a specific tyre pressure at a specific speed on a smooth drum roller in a test facility. No potholes, no load variation, no 40-degree heat softening the compound. The number on the sticker is real, technically accurate, and completely useless for predicting what you are actually getting. Failure point 3, the Chinese brand flood. The third failure point is one the industry does not talk about at all, which is the explosion of Chinese budget tyre brands carrying names specifically designed to sound European: Ostone, Hyder, Infinity, and Accelera. These brands have names that could belong to a small Italian boutique manufacturer. They do not. They are volume producers flooding the Australian market through online retailers and independent tyre shops looking to maximise margin. I want to be fair here. Not every Chinese tyre is dangerous. Some mid-tier Chinese brands have improved significantly, but independent wet braking tests, including testing published by Australian automotive outlets and the United Kingdom's tyre reviews, consistently show the bottom tier of these imports recording stopping distances that would genuinely alarm you if you saw the numbers next to the price you paid. Brands to avoid. There are 3 categories to avoid. I want you to write these down because the tyre shop is not going to tell you any of this. First, any unrecognized brand sold primarily through online marketplaces at prices below $80 per tyre for a standard passenger size. I am talking about listings with 5-star reviews, a brand name you have never heard of, and a product photo that looks like it was taken in a warehouse in Shenzhen at 2 in the morning. The margin is not magic, it is not a special deal, it is not the retailer cutting into their profit to pass savings on to you. The money comes out of the compound. The silica gets replaced with something cheaper, the casing gets thinner, and the tyre that arrives on your doorstep looks exactly like a tyre and performs like something considerably less than that when the road is wet and you need it most. Second, there are house brand tyres sold by large national chains under a proprietary label. You have seen these. The chain's own branding sits on the sidewall right next to the premium options, and they are priced to look like a bargain. These tyres are sourced from the lowest bidder on a rolling supply contract. The retailer's name is on the tyre. Their quality control is not. When the compound fails, the brand on the sidewall has no engineering team to answer for it. Third, this is the easiest test you will ever run. Ask the seller for the factory of manufacture and the treadwear rating before you commit. A legitimate tyre brand can answer both questions in under 30 seconds. If the person behind the counter goes quiet, checks their phone, or says it does not matter, that is your answer. walk out, the tyre is not worth the risk. What you should actually buy. Third on the list is Hankook and Kumho from the Korean mid-tier. These are not premium tyres, but independent testing consistently places them significantly ahead of the budget imports. They use real silica compounds, they publish genuine test data, and they have been competing in the mainstream market long enough to have a performance reputation worth protecting. For a second vehicle, a work ute, or a car where you are watching the budget, this is the floor, not the target, the floor. Second on the list is the premium Japanese and German tier. Bridgestone's Turanza and Potenza lines, and Continental's Premium Contact and Sport Contact. These are the tyres that consistently appear at the top of independent wet braking tests. They are not always at the very top, but they sit within a margin where the difference is engineering, not safety. If you are running a family car, a people mover, or anything that routinely carries passengers, this is where your tyre budget belongs. Yes, they cost more. Per kilometre driven, accounting for tread life, they are often cheaper than the budget alternatives. Do the maths. And the best option for serious drivers is Michelin. Specifically, the Primacy and Pilot Sport ranges, depending on your use. I know Michelin is expensive, but the Michelin Pilot Sport 5 has appeared at the top of independent European wet braking tests consistently across 3 consecutive years of evaluation. Their cross-climate range is the only tyre category that performs competitively in both wet summer and light winter conditions, which is relevant in Victoria and Tasmania more than people admit. Michelin is not paying me to say this. I am just reading the test data that the budget tyre shelf does not want you to read. Here is the rule: check the compound and the test data. If a tyre has no independent wet braking result published anywhere, not from the manufacturer, not from a publication, and not from a reviewer, that silence is the result. Premium manufacturers publish their test data because the data helps them sell tyres. Budget manufacturers stay quiet for the same reason. The tyre between your car and the road is the single safety critical component on your vehicle. It is also the one Australians spend the least time researching. The manufacturers have been counting on that since the day they figured out the difference between a good tyre and a dangerous one is completely invisible until you need it. Spend the money, check the data, and subscribe, because next week we are going inside the Australian solar panel market. Tier 1 panels, Tier 2 prices, and the warranty that evaporates 12 months after installation.